Hi, I'm Phil and I'm on a grey gap year. Last year I travelled to Bucharest for the first time, and these are my tips for other first-time travellers. Getting here. Bucharest's main airport is Henry Coanda International, and chances are you'll be flying into this airport. Getting from the airport to the city couldn't be easier, and you've got three main options. The first option is to take a taxi. I arrived between 1 and 2 a.m, but even at that time there were lots of taxis. Official taxis are yellow and they'll be on the rank outside arrivals, and there should be security there to prevent rogue taxi drivers ripping off tourists. But even with these measures, I've still read mixed reports regarding their reliability and trustworthiness, so I just flat out avoided using them, which brings you to your second option, which is to take an Uber. Now, I did use Uber in Bucharest, and it was the usual hassle-free experience. It was exactly what you'd expect. Both Uber and a taxi will cost you around £15 to £20, or about $20 to $25 to get you into the city from the airport. But I didn't take an Uber. I chose option 3, and I took the 783 bus from the airport to the city. Now, the bus leaves from the ground floor, so you'll need to go down one level from arrivals, out through the double doors in front of you, and then just turn left for the bus stop. Now, the roads were quiet and it took about 45 minutes into the city, which is about the same time as it would have taken in a car. Buses from the airport are regular, but there's only about 2 or 3 an hour. I bought a travel card from a bright orange machine for 6 leu, which paid for 2 trips. As you get on the bus, you then have to tap in with the travel card, but there's no need to tap out. It's a set price per trip, and this was 3 leu into the city, which is about 50p or about 60 cents. Also, buying the travel card was painless. The machines have an option for English and it's very straightforward. But you don't even need to do that if you've got a contactless credit or debit card. Now, I didn't know this when I arrived, but you can just tap in to the orange box on the bus with a contactless card, and then there's no need to tap out on public transport. It's just one price per trip. As far as knowing when to get off the bus for my hotel is concerned, I just used Google Maps. I just followed the route. The bus felt like a great adventure, and it was a fear conquered. I met a very kind Romanian gent called Robert on the bus, who talked to me the whole way. He gave me loads of tips on getting around, places to go, things to see. So thank you, Robert. I stayed in the old town, and most things are within walking distance. There's Uber if you don't fancy the walk, or you could use Google Maps to find public transport options. I took the metro to go north to the Triumphal Arch and to the National Village Museum, and you can use the same bright orange machines to get a travel card, or again, if you've got a contactless credit or debit card, you can just tap in with that. It's 3 leu, just the same, so 50p a trip. It's incredibly cheap. Reviews that I read before I went on public transport told me that I would find it infrequent and unreliable, but I didn't find this to be the case at all. There were lots of buses. The metro seemed to have trains every few minutes. It was a really good system. Based on how easy it is to get around and some of the crazy city driving that I saw, I'd say renting a car for Bucharest is a mistake, unless you've got some specific reason for doing that. Where to stay? For me, the best area to stay in is going to be Old Town, and this will probably be more expensive than other parts of Bucharest, but Old Town is the main tourist centre. It's got bars, cafes and restaurants. Just north of Old Town there is like a little cluster, a group of good hotels. I think as long as you're south of Revolution Square, then you're going to be central enough to walk into Old Town for your dinner without having to rely on taxis, Ubers or public transport. I chatted to some fellow travellers who were staying in the old Jewish quarter east of Old Town, and this was a cheaper area to stay in, but it was about a mile or a 20-minute brisk walk into Old Town. There's trams and there's buses, and of course you could always just take an Uber. Eating and drinking. I ate out in Old Town and there are lots of choices. I would say just trust your instincts on where to eat. If you just don't like the look of a place, then don't eat there, but I didn't get any bad service or a bad meal in all the time I was there. A beer costs about 12 to 16 leu, so about £2 to £3, or about $2.5 to $3.5. Wine's more expensive, it's more on a par to a UK restaurant, and Scotch whisky is more expensive again, so it's going to be more than you'd pay in a UK bar. So if you're on a budget, stick to the excellent house beers. I ate at Manuk's and Carrick-a-Bear, and both are historic venues in Old Town, and both were absolutely superb. Dinner at Manuk's was about £25 or about $30. I had 2 courses, drinks, coffees, and I left a tip. Dinner at Carrick-a-Bear was £35. This again was for 2 courses with drinks, coffee and a tip. And I also had dinner at the hotel, and this was the most expensive and least inspiring meal that I had. It was £45 for 2 courses with drinks, coffee and a tip. Apart from the meal at the hotel, I felt that eating out was excellent value, and I had the kind of meals that would easily cost you £60 to £80 a head in London. But if you're on a budget, there are plenty of other options with McDonald's, Pizza Hut and smaller local eateries in Old Town. There's also a bakery called Luca. Let's lovingly call it Bucharest's answer to Greggs, and you can get inexpensive bakery items like pastry rolls with cheese and ham, or a slice of pizza, and all these things cost about £1 or about $1.20. And if you're on a really tight budget or just after a bottle of wine for your room, there are several Carrefour supermarkets just a few minutes walk from Old Town. Safety. Prior to my trip, I had some concerns regarding safety. I was on heightened alert for rip-off taxi drivers, touts, scams, pickpockets, the early warning signs for violent crime, that kind of thing. And I'm a bit red-faced that I went to Bucharest with these preconceptions, because I had no safety concerns at all. Even when I was on a bus from the airport at 2 a.m, I was the only English person there, tired, just off a flight, and I was easy prey. But instead of feeling afraid, I was met with a happy, chatty Robert, and I didn't feel the slightest bit of concern. I felt safer and more relaxed in Bucharest than I do when I'm in London, and any concerns about personal safety were cleansed by this trip. Safety for women. I felt safe in Bucharest, but I'm a middle-aged, middle-class white guy, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to talk about how safe it is for women, but I do have a daughter, so I can give you a protective dad point of view. I'd say that women should be as safe in Bucharest as they would be in any other UK city, but just with one caveat, and that is that the attitude towards women in Bucharest just seemed to be behind the times a little bit, behind Western Europe and the US. Now, I didn't witness any actual harassment, I didn't witness any inappropriate behaviour, but Romanian attitudes to women are front and centre in their advertising, for example. I'm not saying women should avoid Romania, far from it, but I think the Me Too movement has perhaps not quite made it to Bucharest yet. But if you are a woman and you've been to Bucharest, then please share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear about your real life experiences, especially if you're travelling solo. Language. The official language of Romania is, unsurprisingly, Romanian, but English is widely spoken. It's always good manners to learn a few simple phrases like hello, goodbye, please and thank you, but that's all you're going to need to get by. The only place where I had any kind of language barriers was at Luca Bakery. Now, I thought I was reading off the menu on the wall just fine, but the assistant looked at me like I was a crazy person. There was an English speaker in the queue, and of course they translated for me, and they averted any crisis. However, it was just another example of how lovely the people of Bucharest really are. Money and costs. Romania uses the leu, and you'll get about 5.5 leu to the pound, or about 5 to the dollar or the euro. Things are generally cheaper in Romania. I exchanged £250 into Romanian leu, and I brought money back. Some quick comparisons for you. If a meal for 2 in a good restaurant in London costs you £100 to £150, then a comparable meal in Bucharest is going to be about £50 to £70. A Big Mac meal is about £2.50 or $3. Beer in bars and restaurants is good, cold and cheap, and about £2 a pint. Wine and spirits, though, are a similar cost to the UK, with spirits being perhaps a little bit more expensive. Public transport is very cheap, very good, safe and easy to use. I use Google Maps to find buses, metro trains. I also used an Uber, which is just as good as the UK, but a little bit cheaper. When I was looking at hotel prices to book my trip, they seemed to be really good value. A 4-star hotel in Old Town was about £80 a night, whereas the same hotel in, say, Edinburgh or London, same kind of tourist location, would be 200 plus. What are the top things to see and do? I was surprised by how much there is to do in Bucharest, and you could spend a weekend chilling in Old Town, but if you want to go sightseeing, then there is enough here to do, say, something different every day for about a week. Now, Old Town is an amazing place just to chill and enjoy life. It feels really authentic. It doesn't feel touristy at all. There's lovely coffee shops, lively bars, great places to enjoy your dinner. The buildings date back to the 15th and 16th centuries and have survived war and communist upheaval. When you're exploring Old Town, you'll see why it's known as Little Paris or Paris of the East. There's wonderful architecture and beautiful Instagrammable locations like the Palace of Consignments and Deposits, which is now the CEC Bank, or these two gorgeous glass-covered arcades, the Maca and Villa Cross passages. If you're in Bucharest to have a nice chill weekend, just make sure your hotel is in Old Town. While you're in Old Town, make sure you visit the Stavropolios Monastery. The church is dedicated to Archangels St. Michael and St. Gabriel. It's a beautiful building, and if you arrive early enough, you can enjoy the peace of the little courtyard and sit there in quiet contemplation. Out of town, make sure you visit the Bucharest fountains in Unirii Park and then walk down Unirii Boulevard to the Parliament building, lovingly known as the People's Palace. It's the heaviest building in the world, and I've heard it said it's also the world's largest administrative building, but for some reason the Pentagon in the US want to claim that record. If you take a stroll north out of Old Town along Calais Victoriae, you'll come to Revolution Square. If you're over 50 like me and you remember the 80s and the fall of communism in Russia and Eastern Europe, then one of the images from that time was communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu giving a desperate speech on the 21st of December 1989. He was giving it to protesting crowds from the balcony of the Central Committee building in what is now Revolution Square. The square holds the Memorial of Rebirth that commemorates the struggles against communism and those that died in the revolution. Just off Revolution Square is a National Museum of Art, which was unfortunately closed when I was in Bucharest, and the Romanian Athenaeum. Now you can take tours of the Athenaeum for around £10 or $12, but I had to put this in the future visit category. On the way to Revolution Square along Calais Victoriae, there are some lovely cafes that are well worth stopping off and exploring. Rest your weary legs at Casa Capsa. It's a historic cafe and it's a Bucharest institution. The coffee house was established in 1891. It was said to never earn a profit as it was a literary and artistic gathering place, like a French salon if you will. There are parks, museums and lots of other places, and if you'd like to find out more about the things there are to do in Bucharest, then please keep an eye out for my upcoming Exploring Bucharest video. If you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, you'll get a notification for all of my upcoming videos. And since you've made it this far, perhaps you consider giving me a like. I had a wonderful time in Bucharest. It was one of my first solo trips and I was very nervous about going. If you've been to Bucharest, what would your tips for first-time travellers be? Do you have a favourite restaurant or a site to see? Please leave me a comment below because I'd love to hear from you. So all that's left to say is thank you for watching and joining me on my Grey Gap Year.